back in November. A lot has changed since then, and this presentation was created prior to the election, which we have seen has changed things for our students, families, and communities. I have added to this presentation. We'll discuss some of these changes, but today I'm going to discuss the top 6 Carolina TESOL advocacy priorities, in-school advocacy priorities, their basic needs, trauma, and political climate, community. We're going to discuss how to build out and then build up, how you can participate in legislation advocacy. We'll briefly discuss Carolina TESOL, voter voice, and current issues with students. These were the other 2 ladies that I presented with in November. They were very sorry that they could not be here with you today. And I'm sorry too, because these ladies are awesome and they have so much knowledge. Jamie is here in South Carolina, and she is the former advocacy coordinator for TESOL. And Jen is in North Carolina, and she is the advocacy coordinator for TESOL. And I am the current South Carolina advocacy coordinator for TESOL. This is my 12th year as an ML teacher. I'm currently at the 9th grade campus, but I've taught all grade levels. I'm also part of the SCMLE network on the leadership team, and I'm also on the CELA Biliteracy Committee. Carolina TESOL is committed to advocating for English learners through the Carolinas by informing educators of national, state, and local research issues and policies affecting ELs, and advising its members of advocacy resources and opportunities. There are numerous definitions of advocacy, but here is one that we liked. I define advocacy for ELs as working for ELs' equitable and excellent education by taking appropriate actions on their behalf. Advocacy for ELs means stepping in and providing a voice for those students and their families who have not yet developed their own strong voice in their education. Advocacy comes in many forms and range from simple acts to more involved. But even the smallest acts of advocacy can have a huge impact. All of these items listed, many of which I'm sure you're already doing, can be considered advocacy. Listening and observing to what's going on around you, conducting evaluations, holding conversations, setting goals with students and colleagues, making recommendations, being visible, providing education to peers about what is happening with our MLs, public speaking, and then just simply following through with what you say you're going to do. The next 2 slides, I'll quickly go over our advocacy priorities. There are many other areas of advocacy, but these are the 6 top priorities the team has chosen to focus on and the specific issues in each area. In the K through 12, we are focused on protection. It's estimated that 1,000 plus undocumented students will graduate this year, and most are not eligible for DACA. Since students had to be born before June 15, 2007, and this graduating class, their birth dates range from 2006 to 2007, they are not eligible for DACA. In the area of testing, we are looking at the CELA Biliteracy and making sure the test is equitable opportunity for all students by making it affordable or free. Higher education, our focus is to allow all residents, regardless of status or citizenship, the opportunity to apply to public colleges and universities. This is an area that is changing quickly with the rescinding of student visas and states trying to pass new legislation against college access to non-residents. College students are already being affected by these changes. In the area of recertification, our focus is working on requiring pre-service teachers to take TESOL courses, to offer TESOL courses to in-service teachers in the place of Read to Succeed and Letters recertification. And in mental health, we are looking into counseling services, creating reciprocity for licensed essential workers with the special focus on bilingual behavior health counselors and social workers. And the workforce. In the area of licensure and certification, we would like to see, upon successful completion of coursework, all students, regardless of status or citizenship, be allowed to sit for certification exams. We will continue this fight, but again, it has become more difficult with new policies. Our advocacy priorities are the big picture. So I want to look at and discuss in-school advocacy. These are all areas that I'm sure you're familiar with and many of you already participate in. You may not have realized that you're advocating in these areas, or maybe there's an area you are wanting to become more involved with. Today, we're going to look at, like I said, basic needs, trauma, and political climate. So basic needs. This past summer, Carolina TESOL put out a survey asking for input from educators across both states, North and South Carolina. The list of basic needs was created based on their answers received. The areas identified were dental, vision, general health and mental health, housing, clothing, hunger and financial security, safety, technology, transportation, navigating the American public school system. So all of these lead us to ask, who do MLs go to in your school to receive help in meeting their basic needs? Trauma, we will discuss many students face trauma, and here are some of the ways that you can advocate in this area. You can create a safe place for students, establish a mutual understanding of respect, just simply being human. I feel like nowadays we're losing some of that. Know your students' triggers, be patient, don't take things personally, watch out for secondary trauma, collaborate with homeschool systems, consider custodial issues, and don't be afraid to have difficult restorative conversations. And the political climate is having a huge impact on our schools and students right now. It is important to consider this impact on students. Be prepared for discussions. Remind all students to show respect for each other. I've noticed even amongst my students, we're starting to have some conflict. Give students the opportunity to privately share their own experiences with racism, bias, and discrimination. If needed, request a mentor who has experience navigating these issues and engage in professional development opportunities. This quote is just a call to advocate. We who have a means and a voice must use them to help those who have neither. So based on the survey mentioned previously and research, basic needs can be placed into three categories. Personal, which address the physical and mental well-being of a child. Physical, which personally affect the child, but is not health related. And additional needs. These are basic needs that students may have, but may be out of reach for MLs and their families. And I'm going to go over each of these areas. ML teachers often have to identify basic personal needs such as dental, vision, general health, and mental health. At the basic level of needs, newly arrived EL families may not yet be able to turn their attention to becoming involved in their children's education. As teachers, we have to wear many hats, and sometimes we have to take on the role of social worker. Just as you would do for your own children, ML teachers often are the first to identify personal needs such as these listed. It is imperative to know what resources are available in your area. TESOL is working on compiling a list of these resources that will be available in your area at a later time. Physical needs may be the most obvious: housing, clothing, food, technology, and transportation, but are sometimes neglected if teachers are not aware of resources that are available. Knowing the legal rights of students is key to connecting families with services and support as soon as possible. In 2022, 1 in 6 households, at 17%, experienced food insecurity. That's up from 12.5% in 2021. The National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health provides free healthy meals for all students and expands EBT and SNAP benefits to more children. In 2015, McKinney-Vento was reauthorized and guarantees educational rights and supports for students experiencing homelessness, including families that double up. One resource, the National Center for Homeless Education, provides guidance, support, and resources to educators and communities working with homeless children. Additional needs: safety, security, socialization are vital to students' self-esteem and success. Early success in academics is correlated to higher graduation rates and the desire to pursue higher education. Teachers need to know their state's policy on higher ed, as well as legislation on certification and licensure guidelines. Having basic needs met has been proven through research to lead to higher graduation rates. Higher graduation rates are then in turn connected to pursuing higher education, as I said. Students who are in South Carolina without a social security number are limited in the opportunities for higher education, but there are some available, though they can be costly. Above all, it's important to know the laws that support MLs and their families. Educating all students, regardless of citizenship status, is a legal requirement that goes back as far as the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Knowing the laws can help you avoid legal issues. It can also give you a solid basis for selecting temporary accommodations and modifications for your ML learners. Listed here are some of the important laws pertaining to ML students. You do not need to be able to quote the laws necessarily, but being familiar with them is important. Here listed are a few generalized resources that may be available in your area. This is part of the action plan that TESOL is working on. You may know of additional resources in your area, and this is a good idea to keep a list of these on hand so you can refer students, and you also know how to provide help for them. Often, trauma-related topics are considered taboo and left out of the curriculum. It heightens the belief that what a student is experiencing is not okay. Shame replaces resilience. Oftentimes, teachers shy away from trauma-related issue. Number one, because we're mandated reporters, and two, because we do not feel equipped to deal with trauma issues. Jamie Fletcher pushed out a survey this past summer, and a few of the questions dealt with trauma. And the survey revealed that 50% of the participants were not prepared to help students and families with trauma issues. Only 20% felt prepared. And you need to know that 1 in every 2 of the total student population in the US come to our schools having experienced or still experiencing some type of trauma, violence, or chronic stress. Children who have experienced trauma can be triggered and placed into a state of fear. Being in a triggered state can affect the access to higher functions of the prefrontal cortex and can lead to diminished concentration, memory, and language abilities. The U.S. Department of Education Newcomers Toolkit has identified 4 core stressors, and trauma is one of those stressors. But all of these stressors can turn into trauma. This is where, as advocators, we can step in and help provide resources, support, or comfort in hopes that we can prevent trauma from setting in. The toolkit defines traumatic stress as trauma occurs when a child experiences an intense event that threatens or causes harm to his or her emotional or physical well-being. Immigrants and refugees can experience traumatic stress related to the following areas: war and persecution, displacement from their home, flight and migration, poverty, and family and community violence. But we're not only talking about newcomers. Even our experienced MLs have stressors or have experienced trauma or could currently be experiencing trauma. The National Traumatic Stress Network has identified 12 types of trauma related to children. Our experienced MLs have trauma stemming from their communities and school. Additionally, some students already carry trauma from their home country, traveling here, or family dynamics. Then they experience more trauma and it compounds. With the current political policies and environment changing almost daily, students' trauma can be resurfaced. I wanted to provide some background on trauma and what trauma is. In order for something to be traumatic, the 3 E's need to take place. To start with, an event happens, or a series of events, or it can be a set of circumstances that is experienced. These events or experiences can be physical or emotional harm, or a life-threatening situation. Then it has to have a lasting effect on the individual's mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. So there has to be some sort of event. The event can be acute, it can happen one time, it can be chronic, happening over and over again, or complex, where you have multiple acute events or a chronic and acute event combined. And then you have an experience. And some things we need to keep in mind with experiences, that every experience is different from that event. If you think of Helene, we all had different experiences with Helene. Some of us had more damage than others. We also have to keep in mind that there's no hierarchy for these events. Trauma is trauma. And also, we need to have no judgment. We need to try to avoid the mindset of, I've been through that and I'm not traumatized. So why is it affecting them that way? Because events and experiences affect people differently. The effects can be immediate, delayed, long-term, or short-term. And you think of COVID-19, for example, and the effects, and it would fall into each of those categories. So again, we are in a position to help. We can be proactive in our stance to support and nurture students, both emotionally and intellectually. Schools have been among the many institutions in the United States that have disempowered and marginalized groups of students, especially students of color, students whose primary language is not English, students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, and LGBTQ+ students. And we've seen this. It's going on today with book banning in our state. Disciplinary measures. I'm sure some of us can share stories about how one of your students was disciplined differently than an English-speaking student just because of cultural misunderstandings. Retention of our students. There's institutional racism and curriculum, and of course, testing with our students. So what can we do to support students physically, socially, emotionally, and academically? The first thing I would suggest is to find like-minded people within your school. Create a community of individuals that will help care for, support, and share in the responsibility of ML students within your school. Sometimes it's difficult to find like-minded people, hopefully not, but there are going to be a few that are not like-minded. So I suggest you try to find some common ground. Agree on a standard for all students. For example, can we not agree that all students should feel safe when they come to school? A lot of times we have teachers coming to us saying the student can't do this, they can't do that, they can't do that. Well, okay, let's stop. Let's agree that every student can do something. There is something the student can do. So finding that common ground is important. And then, of course, help develop student resilience. You can do this by building relationships, encourage student voice and choice, connect the curriculum to their lives, and ensure that routines and practices are consistent and predictable. As we consider the trauma our students endure, it's important for us to consider how we can be a voice for them. Even when the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful, especially as we consider the often hostile anti-immigrant rhetoric students are contending with in the current political climate. Words hold a great deal of power and are impacting our students in ways we may not even realize. All of these were taken from headlines before the election. How much worse have the headlines been since the election? This is an article that Jen found and shared. It is linked here if you pull up the slides for you to read later if you're interested. But the key takeaways are to assure students and encourage them that they can come to you if they are being bullied. Talk to your principal and colleagues about the need to create a safe and inclusive environment, and reach out to families and help cultivate an environment that welcomes and includes them. So originally in our presentation, we broke out into groups to discuss these complicating factors and share our thoughts, our experiences, ideas, and possible solutions for them. Since it's just me today, I thought that we could utilize the chat box. So I asked that you pick one or more of the three factors and share your thoughts. Just place the number first so we know which one you're addressing. So number one, administrators and colleagues who are resistant to cultivating an inclusive school. What are your thoughts, ideas, some possible solutions? How can we help resolve this? Two, students who are silent about their suffering or reluctant to disclose issues they may be facing. How can we help these students? Have you seen this before? What did you do? What did you find that helped? And number three, families who are fearful to come to school. I don't know if any of you are seeing some of this in your area. We have seen some of it. We just encourage them to come to school because it can be worse with them not showing up and being turned over for not attending school. But how do you support these families? What can we do to encourage them? So I encourage you to type in the chat box and we'll look at some of those suggestions. My group was the first one when we did this, and we had very good conversation um, about maybe even opening up and having discussions where colleagues can come and ask questions. Sometimes we don't know about cultural differences and backgrounds, and to have a safe place where we can discuss these is important. So thank you, Elizabeth. Join the Title I school-wide planning team to advocate for MLs. Parent texted me she was terrified to send her children to school due to the ICE raids. She kept her children home for several days. Another family come to the school and asked, what is the policy for ICE raids? Yeah. And that's scary right now for our families. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And what can we do? And especially, I know my school is remaining quiet on some of these issues. We can go to the next slide. So I recommend making an action plan is a great way to be an advocate. You need to know the issues and have some possible solutions. build relationships and convey messages, and think ahead and prepare for the next steps. There is no small role in advocacy. The more people we have talking about the issues, the more support we'll have when we go up to elected officials. Years ago, we were given the advice to build out before you build up. So building out would be where all of you help, looking at your community leaders for support as you advocate for your MLs and their families. Consider talking to clergy, business owners, production managers, community groups, nonprofit organizations to help build your voice. And then once we're built out and we have all this support, we're able to build up. Finding local support may be more difficult than approaching elected officials because you live in the same community as them. However, don't forget the importance of making sure your elected officials hear your voice as a constituent who votes. Find common ground and continue to ask if you can help. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can get involved with that. The following organizations provide in-school advocacy resources. Carolina TESOL, if you look under the ML student section, you will find additional resources. Obviously, you know about SCMLE Educator Network. They also have resources. You select resources and select advocacy. And then Coloring Colorado is a great website if you're not familiar with it, helping ML families and students. And the easiest way to search for them is just to type advocacy in the search bar for the fastest results. So what can we do? These might be some of the next steps or well, I said immediate future because at the time of the presentation, we were going into the election. So this would be like now. So find the allies in your schools, discuss an action/contingency plan if any anti-immigrant rhetoric and/or actions get worse. And we may already be seeing some of that in our schools. Develop an action or contingency plan, share the proposed plan with your school leadership, and advocate for putting the plan or a modified version of the plan into place. Looking at the big picture, what can you do? You can become a member of Carolina TESOL. It's only $15 a year, and 2/3 of the cost of the membership goes straight into student scholarships and teacher grants. Plus, just for being a member, you'll receive discounts on professional development and special access to resources. For example, this summer, members can participate in a free book club where we'll be reading Raptors in the Ricelands. So sign up for Carolina TESOL newsletters and legislative alerts with the TESOL Action Advocacy Center. These are linked in this too when you open up the slides, so it'll link you directly to the page. Review current legislation on the Carolina TESOL Advocacy Voter Voice, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that too. And the TESOL Advocacy Center and their template, and use their template to contact your representatives. And you can share national or state advocacy goals on social media in your schools and or with your community. You can also do outreach. And again, in order to network and build relationships in our community, we need to build out and then up to the state level. TESOL groups need to be an identifiable presence and take every opportunity possible. You can look at presenting, volunteering to present, and share your state advocacy goals. You can also take flyers or other marketing type materials to leave with attendees. If you cannot present, maybe ask to send brochures with talking points. I think it was last year, Carolina TESOL signed up for Voter Voice through TESOL International. This platform makes it very easy for you to search and contact your state and federal congressional members. There are multiple ways to stay connected and advocate through Voter Voice. So this page is linked to the Voter Voice page. And you can see on the right-hand side, you can sign up for alerts on bills that affect MLs and their families and educators. You can also find out if there's current legislation for education topics by typing in keywords, and you can find your state and federal Congress members by zip code. And then you can click on actionable items listed for more info and to send an editable email directly to Congress. So when you click on those actionable items, it populates an email for you, and using your address, it'll automatically populate who your congressmen are. And you can edit the email or you can send the email like it is. It's always good to edit, maybe add a little personal touch, but it makes it very easy and for you to contact representatives. Currently, there are a couple of bills that were introduced that will impact our students. There are links provided to each of these bills for you to access and read later. These are just ones that I'm currently watching and keeping an eye on that were introduced. The House Bill 3936, where they want to create a fund that will provide people with a reward of $500 if you tell ICE officers about a legal immigrant and that person is arrested and deported, you will receive money for that. Also, House Bill 3120, certain hospitals, it will allow certain hospitals to collect data on immigration status. So any hospital that accepts Medicaid would be required to collect data. They say that the data would not be used to track down people and find people that are undocumented. That's what they say. But they would have to report data on how many undocumented people receive services, and they're tracking how much money is being used to treat people who are undocumented. And then Senate Bill 423 was introduced, certain assessments in native language. So like EOCs and SC Ready, certain state assessments to be in their native language. Some states do this, but I honestly don't think this will go anywhere because of funding issues and because of other, the one down below with English being the official language. I really don't think this bill will go anywhere. And then House Bill 3271, in-state college tuition rates. This one's interesting, and it would affect our students because it states that students who are in-state for 3 years or more could receive in-state tuition rates, and it did state even those that are undocumented would be allowed to receive those rates if they can prove they've been in the state for 3 years. So that is an interesting one. Again, I don't think this one will go too much further because of what is happening across the country. And then at the national level, we have the HR 1772, which is to make English as the official language. If you don't already know, English is the official language here in South Carolina. So it really wouldn't change too much for us. The big thing that I see it changing is that we will no longer legally be required to provide translation copies of important documents. And that will really affect our students. Agencies can still provide that service, but they're not required to provide that service. So for example, the National Weather Service has discontinued their contract. They didn't renew their contract for translating services. So from my understanding, all severe weather alerts are only going out in English. And then also just keeping an eye on what's happening across the country. States like Florida, Indiana, Texas, New Hampshire, New Jersey. All these states have introduced some form of legislation that would require schools to either identify undocumented students, not allow undocumented students to attend public schools, charge undocumented students to attend public schools, and take away state tuition rates for undocumented students. That one's in Florida right now, and they allow undocumented students to have in-state tuition rates, but they're looking at taking that away. So there's so much happening in relation to the political climate right now that honestly it just can make your head spin. And there are so many executive orders that have affected our students, and the atmosphere in this country is turning against many of our students. Those that are documented, undocumented, and even natural born citizens are facing some of the worst hatred and violence that we've seen in this country in a long time. So here are some headlines of articles discussing policy and political issues our students and families are dealing with. The articles are linked here if you would like to read them. I want to briefly talk about the one at the top where two LAUSD schools deny entry to federal agents amidst immigration enforcement fears. This one just happened last week. And it was the first time agents tried to enter a school. So whether we like it or not, these things are happening, and they will be happening in our area. For example, this past week, I received a video showing an attorney in Virginia. He was approaching 5 agents in plain clothes, and they said they were, quote, doing welfare checks on children. You may think, okay, that's Virginia. Well, my school district came back from spring break this week, and I found out that this exact same thing happened to at least 2 of my students. They reported that ICE officials were in plain clothes and doing welfare checks, and their families did not know what to do. They were unfamiliar with their rights. They weren't sure how they were supposed to proceed. So this is why it is so important for our voices to be heard, so that our students can be protected and they know how to protect themselves and their families. Our voices, our stories, we talked a lot about voices tonight. This is the theme for the upcoming Carolina TESOL conference this November in Charlotte. So I had an idea. It has been my observation, and you can correct me if I'm not accurate, because I hope I am wrong, but I have observed that school districts in South Carolina are remaining quiet about immigration issues and just hoping it'll just all go away, or they hold the belief, oh, it's not going to happen here. Well, it is happening here, and it's happening to our students, and their voices and their stories deserve to be heard. TESOL International Advocacy Days are June 16th through the 19th, and I will travel to DC and meet with elected officials to discuss legislation and issues directly affecting South Carolina ML students and families. And I'm very excited for this opportunity and would appreciate your help in gathering stories about what is happening around the state. So gathering your or your students' stories will help me identify and share what is happening. So here's a QR code. It's also linked in the slides to a simple form. I'm not asking for personal information, and I ask that you don't provide any personal information on students or if it's even your story. But I'm just trying to gather some stories. What is happening? What are you seeing happening? If you do decide to upload an audio, which I currently have, one of my students is going to tell me her story, and we're going to do an audio recording of it. If you do an audio recording, let's say you take a picture of a document and upload it, or just a document, it will require your email address. But you don't have to do that. You can type your story out and it won't ask for your email address. There was nothing I could do about that. If you upload a document, it needs your email address. But I encourage you to share this. with colleagues, if you have a story to share, if you have students who have a story to share, maybe you have some artwork that shows their story, or even something they had written, you can share that, upload it. This will help me when I go to DC to say this is absolutely happening across our state, because I feel like they are disconnected a lot of times on what is happening. Also, some of these stories will be shared at the upcoming TESOL conference in Charlotte. So you can maybe possibly find your story there. And then last, I leave you with this quote because it really spoke to me and helped me to see what my role in advocacy for my students needs to be. Real advocacy disrupts. It risks something because speaking truth in a world built on denial, advocating for justice in a world built on anything but, will never come without a price. I thank you for being here today. If you want more information about advocacy, there's my email address, South Carolina Advocacy, or Jennifer Manis, North Carolina Advocacy. I am going to start re-put together the advocacy team for South Carolina through TESOL. So if you're interested in that, please email me. I'd love to have you on the team of advocacy because I need all the help I can get. Honestly, I have been feeling very overwhelmed with everything that is happening. And I appreciate people sending me videos or sending me information or telling me stories that they've heard, because it helps me to be informed. I can't do it all. So I'm really excited to start a team for that. And then the next slide just says, I'm open to talk with you. I don't know if we want to unmute or be in the chat box, but how can we help you advocate for your students?
I'm Sharon from Clover, South Carolina, and I think this is really needed for us to come together and talk about this, because we don't always know where to go and what to do, and this has really helped me to see some things. So I would like to also volunteer to be a part of this. Yeah.
The other thing, so I took over this role in January, and it's been a lot. And we just had a board meeting a couple weeks ago. And with everything that's happening, we kind of need to get a green light from the organization. What can we share? What can we say? What can we do? So they've given us that green light to be able to start, sharing resources and information. So one thing we're going to start doing is having a Take Action Tuesday, Carolina TESOL, where you'll see on our socials that we'll have some information and some things that you can do to start taking action.
Okay.
And I also, okay, I'll share with you guys. I did, because of seeing this need, start small, start within your school. And because I had students that were visited by ICE and didn't know what to do, I started putting together a packet of information for them. So I have links to all this information in different languages, like how do you protect yourself with the red cards in different languages, different websites that they can go to for legal help. If anyone wants me to share that with them, just email me and I'll be more than happy to share information we gathered. I'm hoping to get that on TESOL's website, and there are, like, I know SCMLE has stuff, and they've posted things about it as well, but it'd be nice to have it all in one location.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you think that North and South Carolina, it seems like it's statewide with the exception of the states that you were talking about, um, Tennessee, Florida, where they're changing that, but it seems like it's pretty similar what's happening nationwide, I think.
That's my understanding. I
Yeah,
spoke with Jen just this past weekend and she was in agreement. She's seeing a lot of the same things.
okay,
And I hadn't looked too much into their legislation. They don't have anything that's stands out to me right now.
okay,
They were a little more open with like their higher ed in college than we were, but I think they're still having the same struggles.
okay. I know when it first started that, in Charlotte, the schools pulled together, Mecklenburg and the news, and they were very concerned about it and they kind of took action. And I think like South Carolina here, kind of in Clover, but I'm kind of in both of those areas. But yeah, that was good.
Now that you mentioned that, I do recall her saying something that some of the schools were taking action.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't
Yeah.
heard too much from schools in South Carolina. I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy to hear that your school is. That's
Yeah,
great.
the school district was taking action. That was really good. Yeah.
Well, again, I thank everyone and, please share your stories with me, with others. People need to hear this. People need to know what's happening.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Destiny, for presenting today. I've included the slides link in the chat box as well as the feedback form. And once again, if you need certificates for attending this event, you can always email me at my email address. I do want to include one more thing in the chat box. And it's about the Birdies for Charity, if I can. I think the link is too long, but here is Birdies for Charity. Donations will be accepted through April 20th. If there are any more questions or comments about today's event, please feel free to stay. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you all for the next event.